The moment I heard Karen pounding on my door, I knew she wasn't bringing good news. But I had no idea her demand would set off a chain reaction so unbelievable that people still argue whether I made the whole thing up. So listen closely, because what happened next didn't just expose the HOA, it exposed Karen herself. And it all started with 3 simple words: cut them down. It was early morning, barely past sunrise, when Karen marched up my driveway like she owned the entire neighborhood. Her HOA badge hung around her neck like she was some kind of law enforcement officer. She didn't knock, she slammed her fist against my door so hard it rattled the frame. When I opened it, she stood there with a clipboard, a scowl, and a determination to ruin my day. "There's been a complaint," she announced, flipping through papers that looked more dramatic than official. "Your trees are overgrown, unsafe, and violating HOA landscaping standards. They need to be removed immediately." I blinked. "Karen, those trees have been here longer than the street you're standing on." "That's exactly the problem," she snapped. "They're old. They're dangerous. And according to Section 12, Paragraph 4, Subsection C..." "I get it," I interrupted. "You want the trees gone. But they're healthy. They're not hurting anyone." Karen leaned in closer, lowering her voice like she was delivering a threat. "If you don't remove them, the HOA will fine you every single day until you do. And trust me, you won't win this fight." I should have known right then that something was off. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was targeting me. Maybe it was because my house looked better than hers. Maybe it was because I didn't bow down to her authority like everyone else. Or maybe, as I'd later learn, she had a much bigger reason for wanting those trees gone. But at that moment, I didn't have much choice. The fines were real, and the HOA board always backed Karen, no matter how insane her demands were. So reluctantly I agreed. 2 days later, the crew arrived. Chainsaws roared through the air as they cut down the tall, shady trees that stood like guardians on the edge of my yard. I watched helplessly, feeling like a part of my home was being torn away piece by piece. What I didn't know was that removing those trees would expose a hidden weakness beneath Karen's own property, a weakness that had been waiting for the perfect moment to collapse. What happened next turned an ordinary HOA dispute into a disaster so sudden and violent that even Karen couldn't spin it in her favor, not even once. If I had known that cutting down those trees would trigger something buried deep beneath the neighborhood, I would have fought Karen with every ounce of strength I had. But by the time the last stump was hauled away, it was already too late. The ground had begun to whisper quietly, subtly, but loud enough for anyone paying attention. Except Karen, of course. She never noticed anything unless it benefited her. That evening, as I stood at the edge of my yard staring at the empty space where my old trees once stood, something felt wrong. The soil didn't look normal. It looked unsettled, like it had been holding its breath for too long. My neighbor, old Mr. Thompson, shuffled over with his cane, shaking his head as he looked at the damage. "They shouldn't have done that," he muttered. "Those roots held everything together." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Those trees weren't just pretty," he said. "They kept this whole stretch stable. The ground here isn't as solid as it looks. Been that way since before any of us moved in." Before I could ask more, Karen's voice stabbed through the air like a mosquito with a megaphone. "Are you two gossiping about HOA matters without authorization?" she barked, strutting toward us. Her heels clicked against the pavement like she was marching into battle. "Because if so, that's a violation." Mr. Thompson rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might fall out. "Karen, we're talking about the land, not your rules." "Well," she sniffed, "as long as you both understand that everything is proceeding exactly as it should." But everything wasn't proceeding as it should. Because as Karen turned to leave, I noticed something. Something small, but enough to make my stomach drop. Her parking spot, the one right next to my property line, had a faint dip in it. Not a crack, not yet, but like the pavement had sagged just slightly. Almost unnoticeable unless you were looking for it. "Hey Karen," I called out. "You might want to look at your parking space." She spun around, hair whipping dramatically. "My parking space is perfectly fine. Unlike your yard, which looked like a forest and is now in compliance thanks to me. I'm serious. Something's off." Karen didn't even bother to glance. "Nothing is off except your attitude." And with that, she stomped away. But I kept staring at that dip. And as the sun dipped low behind the houses, the ground let out a soft groan. Not loud enough to scare anyone, but enough to warn me. Something was shifting. Something deep. And Karen was standing right above it. By the next morning, the dip in Karen's parking spot had grown. Not by much, but enough that even someone as stubborn as her should have noticed. Except she didn't. Or maybe she did and simply refused to acknowledge it. Karen operated on the belief that if she ignored a problem long enough, it would magically become someone else's responsibility. Usually mine. I walked outside with a cup of coffee just in time to see Karen marching toward her car, arms crossed and chin lifted like she was about to lead a parade. She hit the unlock button and her SUV chirped loudly. "Karen," I called out, trying once again. "Your parking spot is sinking. You should move your car." She glared at me over the roof of her vehicle. "I'm not moving anything. The HOA did a full inspection last year. Everything is structurally sound. Unlike your yard, which is now an eyesore." A loud pop cut her off. Karen froze. I froze. Even the birds seemed to stop mid-flight. The pavement beneath her car shifted, just a tiny adjustment, like it was stretching. Then another pop, sharper this time, echoed through the quiet street. "Karen," I said slowly, "back away, now." But of course, she didn't listen. Instead, she stomped toward me in accusation mode. "This is your fault," she snapped. "You had those trees removed without proper root disposal. You've destabilized the HOA property." "I warned you," I said. "The ground's been acting strange since—" Suddenly, a deep, guttural groan rose from beneath us. The type of sound that makes your spine lock. The earth trembled. Not a quake, but a warning. Karen stumbled, grabbing the side mirror of her SUV. And then everything happened at once. The pavement split open beneath her parking spot with a violent crack. Karen screamed as the back end of her SUV dropped, its rear wheels disappearing into the earth like they'd been swallowed whole. Dirt crumbled, pavement folded inward, and gravity did the rest. Karen scrambled backward, her heels skidding on the asphalt. She barely made it 2 steps, before the sinkhole widened with another thunderous rumble, dragging more of her parking space downward. "My car!" she shrieked, voice cracking. "Do something! This is an emergency! I tried telling you!" I shouted, pulling her farther from the collapsing edge. She clung to my arm like a lifeline as her SUV tilted forward, creaking, groaning, and then plunging deeper into the yawning hole. The earth swallowed it like it had been waiting. When the rumbling finally stopped, Karen and I stared at the empty, gaping pit where her parking spot and her SUV had been. And somehow, I knew this wasn't over. The sinkhole didn't just take Karen's SUV, it took the last shred of her confidence. She stood trembling beside me, staring into the gaping pit as if the earth itself had betrayed her. For once, she didn't have a rulebook, a paragraph, or an HOA code to hide behind. All she had was fear and the sudden realization that she had caused the very disaster she was now blaming on everyone else. Within minutes, neighbors poured out of their homes, phones raised, voices echoing down the street. "What happened? Is that Karen's SUV? Did the ground just collapse?" Karen snapped out of her shock, her instinct for control kicking back in. She straightened her blouse, cleared her throat, and tried to stand taller, though her knees were shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Everyone calm down," she yelled, waving her arms dramatically. "The situation is under HOA control." "Karen," I said quietly, "you don't control sinkholes." She shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Emergency crews arrived soon after. Firefighters, engineers, a geology team. They put up barricades and asked everyone to step back. Karen pushed through them, flashing her HOA badge like it meant something. "I demand to be briefed immediately," she said. One of the engineers gave her a tired look. "Ma'am, this has nothing to do with HOA rules." "This is a geological failure," Karen gasped. "Geological failure? You mean the earth is defective?" "No," he said. "Something was destabilizing the ground. Something big." That's when old Mr. Thompson stepped forward, tapping his cane against the curb. "I knew it," he muttered. "This stretch of land has hollow pockets underneath. The only thing that held it together were the tree roots." Karen's face drained of color. The engineer nodded. "Those roots acted like anchors. Removing them may have accelerated the collapse." All eyes turned to Karen. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time, she had no excuse. No argument, just the crushing realization that she'd demanded the very action that triggered the destruction of her own parking spot. Finally, she whispered, "So, this is my fault?" No one said anything. They didn't have to. Karen stumbled backward, sinking onto the curb as firefighters secured the area. Her SUV was gone. Her authority? Cracked. Just like the pavement she'd sworn was perfectly fine. As the crews continued their work, I took one last look at the sinkhole. A reminder that nature always gets the final word, and sometimes, karma uses the ground itself to speak. Karen didn't say another word that day, and for the first time ever, the neighborhood was quiet. If you think Karen went too far this time, smash that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more wild HOA stories like this. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.